Welcome to Ars Equi, the podcast on all things law and technology. I'm Tima.
I'm Paul, and on this episode, Internet Accessibility.
So this concept of internet accessibility is basically an overall goal of trying to achieve a barrier-free web. So the idea is to create an online space which all people can use regardless of any physical, mental, or technical restrictions that they might have. So essentially, it's trying to bring all the ideas that we have in the real world about inclusion and about making sure that people have access to different spaces, things like that, bringing that into the online landscape.
Yeah, so this isn't just for people with, the classical disabilities, so not just hard of hearing or visually impaired, but also every one of us in certain situations. So I was surprised to learn that even when you're, for example, in bright sunlight and you can't really read the text on your screen, that's also a form of this of accessibility issue, because you can't use, for example, the website as you would have otherwise, or if you're on a train and don't have headphones and can't listen to audio. So these features really help each and every one of us to really make use of the tools that we have.
Yeah, and I think internet accessibility is something that we should all care about because, like Paul says, obviously it affects all of us, but it's also important because we understand that the internet is such an important source of news, communication. Like we manage our finances online, school is online now for the most part, we work on the internet. So it's really important that all people, regardless of whatever limitations they might have, are able to access that and are able to have the benefits of being able to be on the internet and, consume whatever they need to consume in that way. So it's really important for able-bodied people to care about this and to make sure that we really hold our favorite companies accountable and make sure that they are adhering to the laws and the guidelines around internet accessibility.
Yeah, and I'm annoyed when a website isn't designed well or when I find something confusing. But if you don't even have the possibility to access it, it must be very frustrating.
Exactly. And before we started talking about this idea, and this just shows like the level of privilege that we have as able-bodied people. I never thought about, how a disabled person would navigate online. How does a blind person go on Instagram? Like, little things like that. Like you never consider that because you don't have to live in that world, but it's really important to care about how other people are living. And it just creates and fosters the whole environment of inclusion that we're trying to have in this world.
Yeah, so there are certain technical elements to this. Obviously, so tech solutions that enable people to use these services, but also design decisions, right? So and conscious decisions by designers, by programmers, by developers to make a website, make an app accessible.
Exactly. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go into all of the tech for good solutions that are available and have a look at what our favorite apps and what our favorite companies are doing to foster inclusion. But first, let's start with the legal framework, right? So this is a law podcast, as we always say. So it's interesting to know that there is a legal framework around internet accessibility. And to some extent, we as users have rights to be able to properly access websites and applications when we need to draw information from them. So in the South African context, we don't have a specific legislation on web accessibility, but Section 9 of the Constitution prevents unfair discrimination on several grounds, including on the grounds of disability. And also it prevents discrimination in all forms, right? So discrimination online, discrimination in real life, all of that is included. And the Constitution also has the right to information. So this requires that private and public bodies take reasonable steps to ensure that people are able to access important information. So just from these constitutional rights, we already see that the law places an obligation, especially on public bodies, but also on private bodies, to foster inclusion and to make sure that people are able to access information when they need to online.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting because I was looking at different legislation and it was very specific for the web and for specific standards and so on. But even these like very general rights, as you say, for example, the right to access information, can be impacted here by not providing it in an accessible way.
Exactly. I mean, especially if we just look in the context of coronavirus, it's extremely important to be able to access information about changes in the law, changes in the rules. Do I have to wear a mask? Do I not? And the easiest way to access that is to go online and go on the government website and check, right? And if your government website is not easily accessible to all people, then that really impairs someone's right of access to information. So it's kind of like this right that we don't always see as being this huge holistic right, because it's usually just brought into play when someone needs information about a specific legal decision or something in like a criminal context or whatever, but it actually can be extended into the online space.
Yeah, and I mean, this goes beyond, like these technical measures that we will discuss, and that are really, web standards and so on. But it goes on to simple language, for example, or different languages. Just so to reach, especially in the coronavirus context, this is very interesting, to reach everybody that it needs to reach.
Exactly. So definitely web accessibility is extremely important. And I think it's nice to see that we already have an existing legal framework that we can use to enforce this right.
Now, in the EU, there is some specific legislation on this. So there was a directive from 2016 about web accessibility, which obliges all public bodies to make their websites accessible. So since a year or so, for a year now, they have this standard. And we did a test that we'll come to back later to see how they performed and how they adhere to this law. Now, there's also another directive that has been passed already last year and is going to go into effect in 2025, where this obligation for web accessibility is also extended to private bodies. So companies, specific companies, so for example, e-commerce platforms, but also websites where you can book train tickets, have to be accessible and have to have a certain standard. For example, having information available in multiple sensory channels, so you can access it in different ways.
No, this is really good though. And I think it's really interesting that they've extended what was previously just for public bodies, and they've extended it to impact private institutions as well. I think that's great. I think that's a good step forward.
Yeah, and Norway actually has a law that mandates private companies to have accessible websites, have accessible applications, and it actually is quite a success. So it is really popular, and it reduces the excuses that you can make that accessibility is always an afterthought or just costs money or is in the way of making good design, for example, because the counter argument now always is, yeah, but it's illegal if you don't do it. So this apparently has changed things. And when one big airline changed the website in an inaccessible way and was fined for this by the public, by this supervisory authority, this was actually a thing. Like people started talking about web accessibility. We're talking about how this one airline is bad for doing it, whereas another airline does it well. So it really also has an impact on your business.
100%. And I think it's also important that the whole idea of web accessibility by design. We talk about privacy by design, data protection by design. I think web accessibility by design should be part of that conversation because it's so important. And I think we can't continue to further marginalize already marginalized groups. Like already living in the world as a person with certain disabilities must be so difficult. Online, it shouldn't also, those difficulties should not also then translate into that. And whatever we can do to minimize that should be something that we can do. And some of the examples are just so basic and so easy that it's like, it doesn't make sense why developers would not do this already.
Yeah, but it also is a huge market. So there is some business interest in making a website accessible, because I saw a statistic that roughly 20% of people have one or another disability. So there are people there who would use your product if you make it accessible.
Exactly. So it's also a business incentive as well as a moral incentive to do the right thing.
And a legal one.
Exactly. So do the right thing, you guys. Okay, so let's go and talk about the ways in which you can achieve web accessibility. I mean, like we've said, some of these examples are really basic and really quite easy. And a lot of our favorite applications and companies are already doing this. So TikTok is a great example because TikTok has recently made a new update, and in this new update, essentially when you upload a video, it already will be auto captioned. So they've included this auto caption feature, so whatever you're saying will already have subtitles included on the TikTok videos. But this is something that we had been seeing since the beginning of videos on TikTok, though.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting, the subtitle discussion in general, because, for example, YouTube also has it. And TikTok really early users, I think, just started doing it. Because to make it accessible, but also because it really, like, the concept of the app, unlike, for example, Instagram, really depends on the audio.
Exactly.
And if you're somewhere public, for example, and don't want to listen to it, you can't use the app. So people are interested in having these subtitles just because the videos get watched more, because you're not getting scrolled past just because you don't have subtitles. And this kind of developed as a user thing. And now a real function, a real feature has been introduced by TikTok.
Yeah, so TikTok is taking an active step to do something about this. And already they saw that users were doing this anyways. So why not just automate this and make it easier for everyone and also make it accessible for people who are hard of hearing?
I mean, there's also an interesting, I'm thinking of the business side of this and of the decision, because obviously it's a lot of investment into this technology. And I'm also thinking that they are doing this to some extent anyway. So they are analyzing the content of a video for example, content moderation or getting recommending videos to people.
True.
So this is something they're doing anyway, and now they can't, so you have to convert it to text first in order to analyze it.
Yeah.
So if they have the text already, then they can just display it as well.
Yeah, I've seen some influencers on Instagram doing something similar on their stories, and it's like, it looks like, you know how if you play music on the Instagram stories, you can sometimes see the lyrics. So it's kind of like that functionality, but it's with the words that they're saying. So I think there's a way you can do it on Instagram, but apparently I was reading up on this and I'm not 100% sure. Apparently you have to download a separate app called Threads or something, it's a different Instagram app, but for close friends or something like that. And that's where the feature is. And then you can save that video and upload it onto your main Instagram stories.
Okay, so people are going through quite a lot, actually.
Yeah, because I saw that and I was thinking, oh, where is this feature? And I tried to look for it. And then I realized that you have to do it on Threads. So perhaps that's something that Instagram, if it's not already implemented, I'm not sure, should consider implementing into the stories feature. But Instagram also has something that I thought was quite cool that I've never seen before. But apparently when you upload your picture on Instagram, there's a functionality where you can go to more settings, right? While you're uploading the picture. So you upload the picture, before you post it, you can actually include something that's called an alt text. And basically that's where you write a text describing the photo so that people who have visual impairments, when they go through Instagram, they'll hear an automated voice describing your image to them. So yeah, that's also something that we could all easily do on our Instagrams, and it would make the space a lot more inclusive.
Yeah, this is also one of the main features for websites in general. So the W3C, which is the regulatory body more or less of the internet, who does the technical standards, not necessarily the legal ones, so that web developers are can use the features that browsers offer, and so all of these work together well. And for example, this has been there for a long time, is the alt tags.
Yeah.
So if the connection is bad, so this was kind of the original idea, and you couldn't download the picture, you at least have the text, but this is also a great accessibility feature.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, all of these examples that we're discussing, most of them are derived from international standards. So the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines is the main one that web developers use, and those guidelines basically outline most of the stuff that we're talking about. So all of this stuff is not new. I think it's just things that are not really communicated to the public, that we are actively doing this and that to make this experience inclusive for all people.
Yeah, and this is actually also the guideline that most of the laws point to. So when they're saying your websites need to be accessible, this is the standard which you follow.
Exactly. So if you are getting an app developed, or I don't know, creating a website, maybe you're doing it by yourself, it's probably a good idea to have a look at those guidelines and see and make sure that everything that you're doing is in line with the accessibility guidelines. Okay. Should we chat a little bit about the assistive technology?
Yes, I find this really interesting.
Right. So there's separate from what we've discussed now, which is just conscious decisions in web design and user interface, there's actually specific technology that is developed specifically just to assist people with disabilities and impairments when they're using the internet. And I found this so interesting because I had no idea about these things. Like the first really cool one that I saw was a screen reading software. So essentially, it's a software that's used by blind or visually impaired people. And essentially, it's just a voice that reads the content on the web page for you.
Yeah, and for this to work, you need to structure your web page correctly so it doesn't just go all over the place.
Exactly.
And so that it makes sense even if it's read aloud.
Yeah. So that one's really cool. And apparently there's voiceover for Mac. Windows has this functionality as well. And another interesting one is the motion tracker or the eye tracker. So essentially, this is some sort of software that can be included in your device, and it watches a target. So it can watch your eyes, and it can interpret where the user wants the mouse pointer to move. So you can move your eyes up and down, and it scrolls down the screen. So this would obviously be helpful for people who are not able to use their hands or have issues using their hands and their arms, and they can literally move the page with their eyes.
Yeah, I mean, this is all so fascinating because it's really interesting technical solutions.
Yes.
And some of them are even integrated in your operating system. So, for example, for smartwatches, I found this for Apple Watches where you can clench your fist to, for example, pick up the phone if you just have one hand. So you just can put it on one hand and don't need the other, for example, and then move your wrist around to navigate. So it's really, on a technical level, it's really complex.
Yeah.
And really a lot of effort that people go through there.
But also just really smart, because it's such an easy, probably difficult to develop solution, but such an easy solution that can really change things for a lot of people and can really positively influence people's lives.
And you need to be inventive in these kind of...
Yes, right. I think I love the fact that there's all of these inventive solutions, which is why we really wanted to do this Tech for Good series, because we just find it interesting that we can use technology in such an innovative way to really make people's lives better, as opposed to just always talking about data breaches and what's wrong with tech. It's nice to see what's good with tech as well. Yeah. Another interesting one that I saw was speech input software. So again, software that you can have on your device, and essentially it allows you to control your device with your voice. So you can tell your computer, close tab, open tab, click here, scroll down, which is also a really cool thing that you can be able to do if you have certain impairments and can't use your hands to type or whatever.
One feature that I found quite interesting was on iPhones. It can recognize certain sounds and give you a notification. So, for example, if your fire alarm goes off, but you can't hear it, it gives you a notification, tells you.
Oh, that's very cool.
There's a certain sound.
I think it's also interesting that, for example, the Play Store has this accessibility feature. So whenever you upload a third-party app on the Play Store, you can actually have your app tested and have it checked to see if it meets the standards of accessibility and have recommendations on how to improve your app. So already that is also a great step towards achieving inclusivity.
Yeah, and I actually used a tool that is quite similar to this.
Yeah.
So Google Chrome offers this tool. It's called Lighthouse to assess your websites, so statistics in general. So, for example, your speed or how well optimized it is for search engines. But also a point in there is accessibility, and it checks certain features. Obviously, not all of them, because not all of them can be automatically assessed. But it gives you a score in the end out of 100 on how accessible your website is. And I ran this on our website, so the department website.
Yeah.
And we got a 75.
I mean, we could do better than that.
Yeah. So,
but it's not bad, it's a good start.
It isn't bad because I also did the top 50 websites in Austria. So Google is, for example, in there, but also Facebook and Wikipedia and stuff like that.
So how do we score in comparison to the top 50 websites?
We are below average.
Okay.
So the average total score for accessibility for private websites, so excluding the public ones, because they have the obligation to have accessibility standards. So the private average is 87%.
Okay, so we can do way better than 75.
Yeah. And interestingly, the public sector websites were only slightly higher with 91%.
Okay, but I think that's quite strong for the public websites. Then there must be, because I read that there's going to be a review based on this accessibility directive. There's going to be a review this year, I believe, to see how public websites have been able to comply and if things need to change and so on. So, I mean, that shows that I guess the directive has been applied quite well across the board.
Yes, definitely. And most of them are really compliant. Some even got a 100% score. So, for example, the public railways in Austria. But what I also find quite interesting is that this only is obviously a part of the accessibility. So you can only, like, these really technical standards, it, for example, measures the color contrast between the text and the background, so you can see better. And this is one of the points that is the lowest. So they're only I think less than 50%, even 25% of private websites passed this test.
I see we failed that part with our department website.
So light gray on white isn't a good idea.
So apparently our background and foreground colors don't have sufficient contrast ratio.
Yeah, and I mean, this isn't something you think about when you're designing something, but it's an easy fix, right?
Definitely, it's an easy fix. Another interesting thing is navigation. So they say that, I'm looking at the score for our department website, and we don't do well with navigation either. It says, heading elements are not in a sequential descending order. So if you were to have kind of like a motion reading technology or something, or one of the other tech solutions that we discussed, then the voiceover wouldn't be able to read the website to someone with visual impairments in a sequential order. So it would be difficult for them to follow what's going on there.
Yeah. And also an easy fix, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really interesting. And I think it would be cool if people could use this and assess their own websites and see where, because it tells you clearly where you can improve, where you're lacking, what's good, what's bad, what best practice guidelines you should look at again. So it's really interesting. It's really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the big parts of this Web Accessibility Directive is that these public sector bodies need to assess their accessibility. So they actually need to look and they need to invest thought into this, and they can, in certain areas, not be accessible if it isn't possible. But at least they have to be conscious of this and have to find ways and have to prove that they want to find ways where they could improve.
I love that. I really find it really interesting and really great that this is such a big topic of conversation. I think it's really great because I never knew about this directive. I never knew how the law was being applied in this area. I think it's really great that we are doing something to ensure that we don't mimic the same marginalization in the real world and the online space. And I mean, there's only so far we can go because I guess to some extent it's the individual company's decision how accessible their websites are going to be. But I love that the law is getting involved and really putting the pressure on companies to do more.
And also, tech doesn't have to be a hurdle to accessibility, but can also help because it develops tools also help in the real world.
Exactly. And I think the whole idea of what the internet was initially supposed to be really fits with this whole concept of making it an open space where everybody can participate, nobody feels marginalized. I think that's the goal of where we're trying to go with the internet, with social media altogether. So I think this is a great start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a great end of the episode.
Yes. So that brings us to the end of the Tech for Good series. We hope you have enjoyed it. We've had a lot of fun talking to you about different technologies. And we hope that some of us, or some of you listening, will come up with more technological solutions that will make our world a better place.
Thank you for listening.